Thanks, Jeff, and thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Tommie Thompson. I'm a quantitative researcher at the Charter Cities Institute, and I've been the principal investigator for the New Cities Map project. So in a bit, Nitsa will take you through a demo of the map itself, but beforehand, I wanted to kind of talk through our motivation. Why did we make this map? How did we make it? And what kind of research question do we hope it'll answer? So for the past 18 months, we cataloged every single master planned city in the world from 1945 to the present. Our goal was to create a one-time present-day snapshot of the contemporary new cities wave. All across the world, new cities are being built. These are massive projects where you build cities completely from scratch using a master plan document, and many are taking place in the global south. This data, we created a new cities map, which has two components. The first is the map itself. It's an interactive online map. It's free and it will always be free to use for anyone. And we have a data set that's publicly available to download by anyone to use for their own research. Why did we create this map? So from our own work at the Charter Cities Institute and from our discussions with government officials and developers across the world, we recognized that there was a lack of policy guidance on new city construction. Developers weren't always sure how to build their cities, what incentive structure to put in place, or how to attract anchor tenants. Governments had no guidance on how to support these programs, how to structure their partnership with private developers, or to what extent they should regulate these projects to prevent negative consequences. And part of the reason is that the policy and resource discourse is not particularly diverse. The vast majority of new cities research is conducted by urban planners, urban scholars, and geographers. They tend to take a qualitative methodology where they do in-depth analysis of particular cities in case studies or larger theoretical framing. And by and large, they have been critical of the new cities movement. With a few exceptions, most new city scholars tend to just say we shouldn't build these cities at all. We at CCI feel that this is an unpragmatic policy discourse. These cities are going to be built, and we need to figure out policy guidance that can help developers and government try to improve these projects and make sure the benefits are captured by society at large. With this in mind, we created the New Cities Map. The New Cities Map is a social science-oriented research resource. It's geared toward large and quantitative analysis common in the social sciences that can be used to estimate the economic and social impacts of cities. We feel that the new cities wave is going to transform the future urban age, and especially in the global south where many of these projects are taking place. And they should be paid attention to by economists, by policymakers, and by other social scientists. One of the reasons that they haven't really been paid attention to by these scholars is that there's a lack of high quality, rigorous data that's oriented towards the techniques and methods used by social scientists. This is where the New Cities Map comes in, and this is the gap that it's trying to fill. However, we are not the first New Cities Map or list out there. Here I compare our data set, the New Cities Map, with three more prominent new city databases. You can see that most of them focus on new town, these are slightly smaller projects. They are mainly created by urban planners and are geared towards an urban planner and urban scholar audience. And by and large, they have been mainly mapping exercises. That is to say, they find a particular city, they find where it's located on a map, and they plot it on the map. Our data set is trying to expand that by creating a data set that can be more useful for people trying to do large and social science research. And to achieve that, we did two things. First, we created a much deeper data set. So we collected more variables and details on each individual city. This included precise GPS location, which we tried to center at the center point of each urban development. This includes project level information, such as operational budget, construction timeline, management structure. And it also includes governance data. Each of these cities will have their own government, and we tried to figure out what kind of policies are they allowed to implement? What policies were they given control over? If they were housed within a special economic zone, what kind of preferential treatment are they going to receive? And here we can see how our data set stacks against the existing data set. We have over 70 variables. I think by my last count, we have about 86, compared to the relatively narrower data set that exists. Second, we adhere to a strict and transparent inclusion criteria. When we looked around at other data sets and new cities lists, we found it a bit difficult in a lot of them to figure out why particular cities were included or excluded. Knowing this is very important for social science research, because in order to make inferences from the data, we need to know how the sample was constructed, what are particular components. We came up with 6 inclusion criteria that we think define the new city well, and it'll be useful for researchers to use the data set. And I just want to spend a little time talking about how we collected the data. So for each city, for each country in the world, we created a list of every single city in that country. We then filtered that list by an inclusion criteria. Afterward, we did a deep dive with a more in-depth inclusion criteria test. We looked at each city and we tried to see to what extent it met our 6 inclusion criteria. When there were edge cases or ambiguous cases, we had in-depth meetings to discuss it. The information itself was taken from 2 sources. We tried to prioritize official documents and the master plan itself to collect the information. However, we soon learned that this was challenging. A lot of the new cities projects are private development by private actors, and the private sector tends to be relatively secretive about their project and not to publish a lot of official information. So we also had to rely on secondary sources, interviews, and news articles. This is the current state of the project. We set out to create a comprehensive data set of every modern master plan city and all of their information. However, due to some resource constraints, we had to make some difficult trade-offs. We completed the full data collection for Latin America, North America, and India. For Africa, which is an important region for CCI, we collected their GPS location and their project level information, but we did not collect governance information. For the remaining region, we only collected their GPS location and the information needed to determine their inclusion in the data set. Pending more support, we'd like to complete the project. First, we'd like to complete data collection for every region so that every city has the full suite of variables. Second, we'd like to expand the data set to go from just a one-time present-day picture of the modern new cities wave to a time series data set where we can track how these different cities evolve over time. We think that'll help yield actionable policy recommendations. And third, we'd like to go deeper into the project level detail. The project level details were relatively difficult to collect because, as I said, a lot of the details are shrouded in corporate secrecy. But if we spend more time, we can collect deeper information and more types of project level information. And yes, thank you for hearing the presentation.